seconds, and then we can get started. Actually, it's been really fun for us at E2 Language meeting all these doctors applying for the US recently. It's been really good. Some amazing candidates, like, wow. Obviously, very high level English skills, but very, I've got to say, you're ideal students. You've done the homework. You often come to the tutorials or come to the speaking mock tests, having learned the methods that we teach on the platform, and you apply those methods in the classes, in the tutorials, in the speaking mock tests, etc. And you can tell for us at E2 Language meeting all these. Okay, cool. And you can tell, and that's a real delight, because it just means that you've done 80% of the sort of work by the time you get to that speaking mock test. And so then in the speaking mock test, for example, we sort of give you a few little finer points that you can use to enhance your score. And we do that through the feedback. And then I'm suspecting on test day, you're going to get a very high score. And that's what everyone should be doing, is making sure that you've understood the methods that we teach on E2, how to structure your letter, how to deliver the, how to converse properly in that speaking mock test, etc. And we're thinking the whole time, when we're writing the letter or when we're doing the speaking mock test, we're thinking about the criteria. We're thinking about what the examiners are looking for. Okay, you might have your own style of doing something. It doesn't matter. On test day, do it the way the OET wants you to do it. Okay, and that's what we're very good at E2 Language, is really summarizing down what the examiners are looking for, so you can very efficiently get those high scores. Because ultimately, you want to come in once, you want to do this test once, and then you want to leave and never think about it again. That's the plan. But hopefully you also pick up some good skills that you can apply in your clinical settings as well, which would be great. Okay, we're ready to go. So that's cool. I'll just share my screen with you. Cool. So hello, my name is Jay. I'm one of the expert OET teachers at E2 Language. Hello to all of you on YouTube as well who are watching this. If you're not yet a member at E2 Language, I strongly recommend that you get off YouTube and you come across to e2language.com. You can sign up for free. You can still join some of the live classes. I think there's one full free practice test for you there. But of course, if you're a member, you get access to daily live classes, feedback, the mock test, 6 full practice tests. There's a lot on the platform. Okay, what we're going to focus on in this workshop or this masterclass is OET writing, and the reason is it is the hardest subtest. It is the subtest that most candidates fail. If you look at the statistics worldwide, you can see the listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Writing is the one where people get the lowest scores, okay? So this one requires attention. So what I'm going to do is take you through, again, really what we're looking at here is the criteria. What is the criteria? The criteria is, you can think about this like the checklist that the examiners look at while they're marking your letter. So in one hand, I've got your letter that you've written. On the other hand, I'm looking at this criteria and I'm going, okay, how did she go? What did she get for purpose? Okay, let me give her that. What did she get for content? Let me look at your letter. Okay, I'll give her that score, etc. So this table here is what it's all about. And this is what the examiners, how the examiner marks your letter. So this is what we need to apply in our writing, okay? For your interest, if you're aiming for a B score, which most of you are, that's enough to get you across the line. It's between 350 to 440. That's the equivalent of an IELTS 7 to 7.5. What that means in terms of the criteria is that you'll score for purpose. You'll score 2 out of 3. We'll talk about this in a minute. I'll tell you what purpose means, etc. And you score 5 out of 7 on average for all the other criteria. So you can see that you really do need to understand what is content, what is conciseness and clarity, what is genre and style, what is organization and layout, what is language, and what is purpose, okay? Because you need to score pretty highly in each of those in order to get a B. So as I just mentioned, these are the key criteria, or not the key, these are the criteria. There are sub-criteria, which I'm going to explain to you, but there are effectively 6 categories that you're marked on: purpose, content, conciseness and clarity, genre and style, organization and layout, and language. Okay, and interestingly, even though this is ultimately a language test, it's an English language test, you will notice that language only figures in number 6 there. Okay, so a lot of your language is assessed more on your clinical skills rather than your clinical skills in terms of writing the letter, rather than focusing on grammar or sentence structure or your knowledge of parts of speech or anything like that. In saying that though, language is imbued throughout your letter, okay? If you can't structure up a sentence properly, if you do struggle with certain verb tenses, that's going to affect other parts of your clinical aspects of your letter. So let's start with purpose. What does that mean? Well, in order to understand all of these criteria, we're going to focus on this model letter here. This is one from E2 language, and it's a high quality model letter. It's perfect. This is a perfect one. So we're going to use this as our benchmark, our example. And let's briefly talk about letter structure, okay? Because there is a lot of the letter is, there's a structure, okay? There's a structure. There's not a template. That's a very different thing, but there's a structure. The structure is like this. At the top of the letter, you can write the date. You can write the date just below the address. It doesn't matter, okay? So you got 2 spots where you can write the date there. Let me get out my little pointer thing so I can really focus in on this. Okay, cool. So you got your date here. That'll be the date of your exam, okay? So what's the date today? 2nd of October, so you'll be writing 2nd of October. Or you can write the date here, it doesn't matter. Next, you have the address. Next, you have the dear recipient regarding patient and the age of the patient. Here's your purpose statement. Okay, this is really critical. We'll look at this next. Purpose statement. You have your expanded purpose. Down the bottom here, you have your request. What do you want the recipient to do for you? That goes there, just above the sign off. Okay, so this is the overall structure. Obviously, this is based on the case notes. It's based on the task on test day. So again, there is no template. You have to be flexible. You'll notice though that there's 2 paragraphs here that aren't purpose and they're not a request. These are, let's just call them, what can we call these? Additional paragraphs. You know, these will be other important aspects from the case notes that aren't necessarily the main medical issue, but there are other things that you'll need to put into the letter, and they sort of sit. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3 paragraphs, who knows? Depends on test day. This is your overall letter structure though. So let's dig in and take a look. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to go through it again in more detail. I think it's important. So the date can go there and there. This address here, all of this comes from the task, okay? So let me disappear here. So Miss Loretta Pasquale. So there's Miss Loretta Pasquale, physiotherapist, Templestowe District Medical Clinic, Templestowe District Medical Clinic. There's the address, 43 Anderson Street, Templestowe. So this little section here all of it comes from the task. This bit here, Miss Pasquale, again, comes from the task. The patient's name and his age comes from the top of the case notes. Here's your purpose and your purpose expanded. Okay, now we're ready to look at that more closely. That wasn't the most elegant thing. Okay. What does purpose mean? The purpose statement, okay, the purpose of your letter needs to be immediately apparent. So that little sentence or possibly 2 sentences, this is the analogy. Okay, let's say I'm the recipient of your letter. So I'm the physiotherapist. I pick up your letter. I read this sort of, I might read the dear J, etc. Purpose statement. I need to find out immediately from you who the patient is, what's wrong with them, and what you want me to do. Who the patient is, what's wrong with them, and what you want me to do, okay? That's what I need to read in that first sentence. All of that needs to be included in a single sentence or possibly 2 sentences. For example, Mr. Chien requires your professional assistance for his ongoing difficulties with mobility following recent surgery. Cool, very clear. I know who the patient is. I know what's wrong with him. He's had recent surgery. I'm going to expand upon this purpose next in detail. And what do you want me to do? Well, just offer professional assistance with his mobility. And I'm a physiotherapist, so cool, I can do that. So that's that little bit there. That's the first real bit of writing that you'll do on test day. All of this is very formulaic. This is the first real sentence that you'll make creatively. Next part is I'm going to expand upon that single sentence. Here it is here. And this is called the 1B. The purpose of your letter is sufficiently expanded. So let's read this part here. This is where I go into detail about really the main medical issue or what happened to the patient. Really, I'm telling a little story now about the key points about Mr. Chien. Mr. Chien was admitted to St. Andrew's Hospital 2 days ago with swelling and fluid buildup in his right knee, the result of a total knee replacement, which he underwent on this particular date due to osteoarthritis. Okay, cool. I've got a nice little story narrative about the patient now. The resulting pain and swelling have severely limited his mobility. Consequently, his self-care activities have been significantly compromised. Great. So I've taken that purpose, I've expanded it, giving key details here in 1B. Okay? And that's that part of your letter there, just below the purpose statement. Cool. Any questions about what we've talked about so far? Let's pause here. If you have any questions, pop them into the chat. Any questions about the purpose and the expansion of the purpose statement, or the address, or? Nope. Looks nice and clear. No questions. That's always a good thing when you're a teacher and you have no questions. Cool. All right. I'm going to push on. So when we look back at there's always a question pops in just as I start again. Okay, so a few questions have popped in, which I might answer a bit later. Mona's asked, can we use case note words? The answer is yes. Yes, you can take entire phrases from the case notes, that's fine. You don't have to transform the words or find synonyms or whatnot. Naturally, you will expand the case notes into sentences. And you can think of more elegant ways to say the case note. Zubia, 102, what's the word count? I'll answer that later on. Georgia, should I start with the last visit or first visit? Actually, that's a good question, which I might address now. So let's go back here and have a look at the overall letter. Okay. So when your letter will follow two main structures, okay? You'll always talk about the main medical issue here and the purpose, which you'll expand upon here. Then with these paragraphs here, there's sort of two main structures that will occur. One will be you'll talk about secondary issues, secondary medical issues, and possibly a tertiary or third medical or social issue along with that that's relevant for the recipient. So you're thinking sort of order of importance. You've got the main medical issue, which you outline in the purpose, go into detail. Then you might mention something about what else has been happening to Mr. Chien that's relevant to me, and possibly a third thing. Okay, so it's order of importance. Second overall structure will be chronologically. That is, you'll outline the main medical issue and you go into detail. And then here you might talk about, okay, Mr. Chien first visited me on this date with these issues. Following that, he visited 6 weeks later with this issue. So we're telling a story based in time here, not necessarily by order of importance, but we're putting out a narrative, a story about when he visited and what happened. Now, you can start with the most recent visit. Most recently, Mr. Chien visited me and this was his issue. 2 weeks prior to that, he had this issue. Or you can reverse it and start from, 6 months ago, Mr. Chien visited me and these were his issues. His subsequent visits, this is what happened. Doesn't matter. It's up to you to tell that story. It's a good question though. So there's your purpose. We've done that. We've got 3 points. Congratulations. Let's now take a look at content. Okay, so just if you're new to OET, I'll just broadly explain what happens. So you'll get a set of case notes about a patient. And as we saw before, you'll get a task. Okay. Now there's going to be more case notes. Hang on, how can I say this? So in the task, you're asked to write a letter to a specific professional. Might be a referral, discharge, or transfer letter. Therefore, and there'll be lots of case notes, right? Now, only some of the case notes are going to be relevant for that recipient of the letter, for that professional. And so I need to ignore a lot of the case notes and just select carefully according to relevance. Okay, so really when we're talking about content here, we're talking about relevance in terms of the case notes for that profession, for that task. So let's take a look in more depth at these sub-criteria. So the content of your letter is appropriate to your intended reader. Again, I'm writing a letter to a physiotherapist. Now let's imagine there are case notes there about Mr. Chien's social issues, whatever. He lives alone and whatever, he's got social issues. Is that going to be relevant to the physiotherapist? No. And what the OET do is they put in what you can think of as distractor case notes, stuff that you should not be including in your letter because it's not relevant. So you need to ignore distracting case notes. Really, you're just selecting what is absolutely appropriate and relevant to the reader and ignoring other stuff. Okay, that's pretty clear. 2B, this one is really important, by the way. The content of your letter addresses what is needed to continue care. Key information is included. No important details are missing. So this is this part of the letter here. This is what you want the recipient of your letter to do, okay? Because you want them to do something for you. You're not just writing them a letter telling them about Mr. Chien. You're writing them a letter telling them about Mr. Chien because you want them to do something, maybe offer a second opinion, maybe provide comprehensive rehabilitation, maybe get some tests done for Mr. Chien, whatever it is. There'll be a request. And this will usually come in the case notes under discharge plan or something like that. There'll be a section of case notes where it will either be very straightforward, like this one's very straightforward. I just want the physiotherapist to provide rehabilitation. Or you might write to another doctor and ask for a second opinion. Okay, very straightforward request. Sometimes the requests have multiple requests, not just single requests. I might need this done, and this checked, for example. So there might be 3 things. So again, back to 2B, the content of your letter addresses what is needed to continue care. Key information is included. No important details are missing. So if let's say you need a request that has multiple things and you do not include something, you're going to be penalized for that. Cool? Good, I don't need to show you that. Content, we're still on content. The content of your letter accurately represents the case notes. Okay, so this is about interpretation. The case notes that you get on test day are not written in well-formed sentences. Just like in your hospitals and your clinics, they'll be written in kind of shorthand. That is, they'll be abbreviated, there will be abbreviations, there might be symbols used, etc. So you need to interpret those case notes and make sure that you are not misinterpreting them, for example. So in the discharge plan here, imagine this is the case notes. It says patient discharged home with family assistance, regular diet is tolerated, needs acute comprehensive rehabilitation, patient has front wheel walker. This is what you wrote, and this is a complete misinterpretation. Mr. Chien's family will accompany him to his nursing home. Wrong. Please note that he is not tolerating his regular diet. Wrong. In addition to some rehabilitation, it says comprehensive rehabilitation. That's a drastic misinterpretation. He also requires a front wheel walker. patient has front wheel walker. So this is an example of somebody who's done something, misinterpreted them. Let's dig into misinterpretation at a language level, because you might interpret the case notes correctly, you might comprehend them and understand them, but then if your grammar is not very good, you might then write a letter which actually creates conflict. Have a look at the difference between Mr. Chien has osteoarthritis, had osteoarthritis, or has had osteoarthritis. So what we're dealing with here is a single letter, has versus had, which changes the meaning completely. This verb, as one example, changes this completely. And this is the past perfect. This changes it as well. Have a look at this one. Mr. Chien has a lump in his leg. So we're talking about a singular noun, one lump in his leg. Okay. Imagine if the case notes actually said lumpy. Mr. Chien has a lumpy leg. That's very different. If the case notes said lumpy leg and you wrote a lump in his leg, boom, you would lose points. And this is a problem with nouns and adjectives. This is a problem here with verb tenses. So you can see how, although language is assessed at the end, which we'll look at in part 6 coming up, you can see how it can affect other parts of your letter as well. Okay, any questions on content here? Any questions on content? Okay, so Wilson's, I'm just going to circle back here to the purpose here. Wilson's got a question I'm just going to reinterpret your question here, Wilson. So in that purpose statement right at the start, when we outline who the patient is, what's wrong, and what you want the recipient to do, should we be mentioning the request? It means we're repeating that twice, right? The answer is yes. You want to repeat that twice. You want to mention the request in that purpose statement briefly. He requires your professional assistance. And then you want to, at the end, really outline in detail. The final paragraph, the request paragraph, goes into detail about the request, okay? So mention it briefly in the purpose and then expand on that as in the request paragraph. Mona, what should I do if I'm looking at the case notes and I don't know the meaning of a word? So the case notes are never too complex for your medical knowledge. I think they're very much 101 sort of basic medical issues that the patient has. You're not going to come across a condition that a patient has that you've never heard of based on your profession, for example. So they'll be sort of straightforward. The other thing is the case notes will only use universal abbreviations. So it doesn't matter which country you're from, SOB, BP, these abbreviations will be used. Nothing that's, idiosyncratic to whatever, Australia. Josephine, I'm wondering, why do we need to write the XM date and not in the case notes discharge date? I don't understand, sorry. Dalal, so what is the difference between the purpose and the request at the end? Cool, I think I just answered that before. Okay, conciseness and clarity. Let's talk about this aspect of your letter. And just broadly, what does this mean? Well, this English test is very different to an academic English test, like IELTS or TOEFL or PT Academic. In academic English tests, you need to write your essay, usually it's an essay, in a way that really shows off the complexity of your language use. You need to be accurate, but you also need to show a lot of complexity in your sentence structures and whatnot. OET is different. OET is not about complexity. It's about clarity. Okay, it's about efficiency of word use. It really is about putting as much information into your sentence as possible, but keeping your sentence as clear as possible. Okay. Because again, you're not writing an essay, a discursive essay about global warming. What you're doing is writing a letter that needs to be very efficiently understood by the recipient. And therefore your language should be concise and clear. So someone asked before about the word count. This 3A is about word count, and how they establish word count is they're not very strict with word count in OET. You know, in IELTS, you need to write 250 words or more, or else you get deducted points. OET is not like that. The body of your letter should be and will be around or between sort of approximately 180 to 200 words. And that's based on this, that you have not included irrelevant information. If you include irrelevant information, your word count will go too high. Or you haven't excluded relevant information. If you exclude relevant information, your word count will be too low. Okay? So by selecting relevant case notes and excluding irrelevant stuff and expanding it out, you naturally, the body of your letter, this part here is the body of your letter. This will be around 180 to 200 words naturally. Okay? And when you're preparing and practicing, etc., you'll find that that is the case, or it should be the case. And again, we're thinking about conciseness and clarity here. If you're writing really long-winded sentences, maybe you're going to go too far, too high into the word count. Okay, so it needs to be efficient, etc. That's the word count issue there. I don't know why that's there. Okay, B, you summarized information effectively. So this, again, we're being concise, we're being clear. What we need to do with case notes is, I can't just turn that into a sentence and then write one more sentence about this, and then write a sentence about this, and then write a sentence. No, let's exclude those. I don't just turn one case note into a sentence. What I do is I take that case note, and that case note, and turn that into a sentence, because they're sort of related, they're connected in some way. So what I'm doing is I'm summarizing information effectively. So for example, Mr. Chen was admitted to St. Andrew's Hospital 2 days ago with swelling and fluid buildup. Does it say that here? It's not really based on this, sorry. Anyway, imagine that, forget this paragraph, it's not a good example, but I put that one and that one together, and maybe that one's a separate sentence. Okay, so it's summarizing case notes effectively. Next one is with regard to clarity. I need to clearly present information. What this means is I need to tell the story very simply. Okay, I don't want to make a convoluted, complex story about Mr. Chen. I am telling a story to the recipient of my letter. What happened is really my story. This is what happened. During Mr. Chen's time in care, the swelling was successfully treated by ice packs and painkillers. It was noted the incision site had healed well. His mobility was supervised, and he was given the use of a front wheel walker to assist in this. He still experiences a limited range of motion, managing less than 100 meters when mobilizing with his front wheel walker. He is now medically stable and ready for discharge with the assistance of his family, who will supervise his self-care activities, including bathing, grooming, lower, blah, 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 blah. So I'm telling a story, I'm presenting the information. Now, what I've highlighted here, well, this is a preposition, and verbs and adverbs. What I'm here, you'll notice that I'm talking about the past, was noted, was supervised, was given, present, still experiences, now, is now, and future, will supervise. Okay, so I'm using my understanding and use of verb tenses and active and passive sentences and prepositions and adverbs to tell a very clear story. And that's what you want. You want a clear story. Any questions about conciseness and clarity? Naledi, in regards to the word count, mentioning the request twice in purpose and at the end, would it not use too much wording? No. You need to do that. In your purpose, you briefly mention the request. In your request paragraph, you write about it in detail. That's enough. You'll have enough words to do that and to You know, writing 180 to 200 words in the body of your letter it's enough. It's enough. Jotan, what is better, using synonyms or the same words in the letter? Okay, so let's go back and have a look here. Let's look at these case notes here. What's a synonym for osteoarthritis? There is none. We need to use that word. Right knee, progressive severe pain. What's a synonym for right knee? There is none. You use right knee. Okay, and again, you want to be clear. What's a good one that I can, I would use this, I would use these adjectives, these progressive severe pain. Obviously though, I can't just write that into my letter. I need to turn that into a sentence. So, here, okay. Whatever it says. So Mr. Chen had a total knee replacement on this date due to osteoarthritis. So I'm naturally expanding out these case notes. And I'm using words because they're clear and there's no synonyms. I'm adding in words, obviously, to create the sentences. So don't be afraid to use the words from the case notes. That's totally fine. Sometimes though, they will use a word that has a better synonym. For example, the word ambulate. Just use the word walk. Okay, so, and especially think about who you're writing to. He has trouble walking is much clearer than he has trouble ambulating. Wakana, is there a word, when I'm taking the computer-based OET test, is there a word counter? I don't know. I need to do some research on this computer-based OET. I don't know the answer to that. I know from IELTS that the answer is yes. I know from PT and TOEFL the answer is yes. I suspect it's yes, but you might have to find out. Mona, when thinking about conciseness and writing dates, which is better, 3/10 as in 3rd of October, or actually writing October 3rd? You're saving one word there. Yeah, I would probably write 3/10. That's fine. Okay, okay, interesting. Here's a really good question from Al Badri. Okay, Jay, when they give me the vital signs of the patient in the case notes, can I judge them as normal? I think the case notes will tell you that they're normal or, unremarkable. It's a really interesting question though, because, okay, when you're telling that story about the patient, you're not using your own imagination, you're using the case notes. And when I say imagination, you're not providing, like, if there's no diagnosis there, okay, and it won't ask you to provide a diagnosis, and you provide a diagnosis, that'll be judged, you'll be penalized for that. What you're doing is you're turning that case notes into a letter. You're not adding your own spin on it or your own, etc. I can't think of a word. I'm quite sure that if the vital signs are normal, then they will tell you the vitals in the case notes, they'll say vital signs normal. And therefore you can write vital signs were normal, or maybe that'll be actually irrelevant. Dalal, for the age of the patient, should we write the numeral or the word? I would write the numeral. So 18 years old, I'd write 18 years old. Jotan, in the USA, they write month first. What do we have to follow? Either way, it's fine. You can use the USA version of the dates or the British version, it's fine. Alicia, do we have to write out the dosage and frequency of medications the patient is on? It depends. Depends on who you're writing to and whether that recipient knows the patient or not. If you're writing to the patient's GP, they probably already know the medications, etc. If it seems relevant to you, write it. Al-Badri, because in one of your model letters you did so. Oh, what did I do? Oh, okay, interesting. Fair enough. Hadil says the same thing. Interesting. It's a good question. I don't want to say. I don't want to say. Okay. So if you've got vital signs and they are normal, then there's nothing written there that says normal or unremarkable, then I suspect it'll be fine for you to say normal, unremarkable. Case notes will usually say normal or unremarkable, so you don't have to do that interpretation. Cool. Okay, let's talk about the next one, which is genre and style. This is more sort of around the conventions of letter writing. Okay, so your writing is clinical and factual. This is not really an issue for most people. I rarely see this as being an issue. That is, when you're writing, again, you're just taking those case notes, turning it into a letter. You're not putting in your opinions. You're not putting in your spin on things, your twist. You're just simply writing it out factually. So here are the case notes: social background, accountant, alcohol 2 to 3 units socially, non-smoker, enjoys watching soccer, whatever. You wrote, this is a bad example. You might be interested to know that Mr. Chien was an accountant. First of all, it's probably going to be irrelevant for whatever. While he drinks quite heavily, okay, here's your opinion. This is not fact. This is your opinion being put onto here. It's not necessarily accurate either, which is a major concern. Again, this is not clinical or factual. This is putting your opinion in. Luckily, he doesn't smoke. Again, don't do this sort of language. Very matter of fact. Okay. Next one, your writing is appropriate to the reader's discipline and knowledge. What this means here is, for example, if I'm writing to a physiotherapist and I write, below is a very technical description of Mr. Chien's psychological status. This is not appropriate to the reader's discipline. So I need to write my letter in a way that the physiotherapist will understand it. If I'm a doctor who has a very complex understanding of some sort of condition, I'm going to write that in a way that the physio will understand it, because that's not her speciality. The other thing that can be a problem here is when you're referring a patient, you need to how can I say this? You need to write it in a way that is not patronizing to the recipient. Okay, so you wouldn't write something like, dear specialist, let me tell you what's what. Firstly, do this. Secondly, do this. You need to frame it in polite language. I would greatly appreciate your second opinion on a possible sort of, you need to frame the language like that. Okay, not be patronizing. Okay, technical terms, abbreviations, and polite language. So technical terms depends on who you're writing to. You can use them, but again, it depends on who you're writing to. Abbreviations, if the case notes use an abbreviation, they will use a very universal basic one like SOB or BP, for example. And you can also use that. That's fine. Don't create your own abbreviations or use abbreviations that aren't in the case notes. Simple as that. With regard to polite language, this is about formality. It's a semi-formal letter, okay? Or borderline formal. It's just polite. You need to be very polite. So things like, hello, doc, how are you? It's been a long time since we chatted. Totally not appropriate. Well, it looks like all of that sort of language is not appropriate. Cool. Any question on genre and style? Most people don't have issues with that. Okay, here's a question from Lakshmi, which is, can we use our pen on test day to highlight important case notes? Yes. So you get 5 minutes reading time, in which time you cannot use your pen. It's just for reading time. Then you get 40 minutes to write, and then you can actually start using your pen. So what you really need to do in the 5 minutes reading time is start to be thinking about relevance of case notes and structure of your letter. As soon as you can start writing, I would structure up a little plan. Basically, what will be your purpose expanded, supplementary paragraphs, and request. That's your little plan that you'll write. And I would spend a couple of minutes planning my letter before I start to write, because especially if you're writing the paper-based test, you basically cannot get in there and change it around. Computer-based test, cool. You can put your mouse cursor in, you can move sentences and stuff, but not with paper-based. Anissa, what is correct to say, the right leg or right leg? It depends on what you're trying to say. Salome, will we have an eraser if we make a mistake? Yes. Zubia, can't we start writing from the start of the 45 minutes itself? No, 5 minutes reading time, you cannot use your pen. Then the invigilator will say, okay, you can begin writing, in which case you can begin writing. It's a bit sort of funny, but anyway, the purpose of that is you spend that 5 minutes really understanding the task, who you're writing to, why you're writing to them, then understanding the case notes about the patient. Okay, let's talk about organization and layout. This is pretty straightforward. So here's your letter. It needs to be appropriate, logical, and clear. Okay, so that refers to the overall structure of the letter here in terms of your overall paragraphs, but also within your paragraphs. Again, you're telling a story. It needs to be well organized, appropriate, logical, and clear. Okay, your little story, you got your overall story, and then you got your little stories here. Each needs to be appropriate, logical, and clear. Key information is highlighted. This doesn't mean literally highlighted like with a highlighter. This means that if you're telling a story, you want the important information to go first, okay? And then sort of other information. And then you move to your next paragraph where the key information will be prioritized or put to the top of the paragraph, okay? Don't bury important information within the paragraph. Make it very clear. Subsections well organized. That just means purpose expanded, basically your overall paragraphing. And this is the request is separated from this part here, okay? And overall letter is well laid out. That's just the format of the letter. That's pretty clear. Let's talk about language briefly. So again, this is a language test first and foremost. And so you will be scored on these things here, that your overall language use makes meaning clear. That is, you can write in such a way that the meaning is clear. If your sentence structures are a little bit inaccurate, or you're just not very good at sort of using vocabulary precisely, this is going to make it unclear. So you need to make sure everything is clear. Vocabulary needs to be precise. Grammar needs to be accurate, as we discussed before, how important that is for interpretation. Sentence structures are accurate. So what's the difference here? Grammar refers to this, the verb tense or the singular plural noun or the use of the article the, for example. This is grammar. Sentence structures need to be accurate. That is, word order is correct. Subject, verb, object. It's clear who's doing what, active, passive sentences, etc. Spelling needs to be accurate. Punctuation also needs to be accurate. So this is language. And as we saw before, what have I done here? As we saw before, we saw an important differences in importance between verb tenses, singular nouns versus singular nouns, plural nouns, also adjectives are important, etc. Cool. So what I might do, just bear with me. I'm just going to take you back to the overall structure, which I think is a good place to finish here. And we'll have a look at that. before we finish up. So if we have a look at this letter here, date, address taken straight from the task, dear Dr. So-and-so, regarding the patient's age, purpose, statement. It has three things: the patient, the issue, and the request, briefly mentioned. The purpose expanded. So whatever the key medical issue is here, we need to then give details about it here. These paragraphs depend on the case notes. There might be secondary or a tertiary issue. It might be a medical issue, it might be a social issue. It depends on the case notes. Then you have your request, what you want the recipient to do with your letter and with the patient, more importantly. And then your sign off. If you have any queries, please feel free to contact me. Yours sincerely, doctor or nurse. Cool, I'll leave that on the screen. Any final questions? Do we sign off the letter with our full name or just write doctor or nurse? Doctor or nurse. I mean, it doesn't matter, but just write doctor or nurse. In fact, I would write just doctor. Yes, I won't tell you why, but just write doctor or nurse. Chlorine, I'm quite sure you have an eraser in the writing section. You definitely have one in the reading section. Again, from the IELTS test, you have an eraser. If you're really concerned about that, check with your local testing center. Sorry. Jay, if you had the option, would you take the paper-based test or the computer-based test? Computer-based, definitely. I've taken the IELTS 5 times just for research purposes. And the computer-based IELTS test is easier than the paper-based. It's the same level of difficulty, but because you can type and move and delete out stuff and add in sentences on the computer, it makes it far easier. So if you do have the option, take the computer-based OET test for sure. That is if you're good on the computer. Dala, what is the best verb tense to use for today's visit? Well, I mean, if it's prior to now, you have to use past tense. Mr. Chien visited me earlier today. It has to be, he was feeling sick. It has to be, sorry, I'm still in my bag there. Pooja, do we get extra 2 minutes to proofread? No, so you just get the 40 minutes total time. What about speed? Al-Badri, I have been graded in some areas as medium. Is that okay? No. So if you're getting feedback from our teachers and you're getting a medium or a low, you need to work out what the issue is. What are you getting a medium or a low on? And when we give feedback, by the way, we give feedback based on this criteria. So maybe you're getting a medium for 3C, whatever it was, content. Then you need to focus on that and improve upon that. All of the feedback we give relates to the overall criteria. Zubia, please give an example of a transfer and discharge letter. On e2language.com, you get examples of referrals, transfers, and discharge. Can we write yours sincerely on all letters? Yes. Yes, that's how you will end the letter. Yours sincerely, nurse. Cool. All right. I think that's all for questions. I'll just do a little shout out to people on YouTube. Hello, people on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, click the subscribe button. Do become a subscriber to this YouTube channel. But more importantly, come to e2language.com and sign up for some free live classes, some of our free sample tests, etc. And then when you're ready, think about upgrading your account to a paid package, Express Plus with the mock test, or maybe a paid package that has tutorials, etc. Our quality of service is second to none, honestly. We really know this test back to front. And I've just been logged out from another device, apparently. Cool. All right. Last question, Hadil. The grading will be on a sample answer or upon our individual letters? No, you submit your writing through. Our teachers mark your writing according to the criteria and send it back to you. That's how it works. That's how you improve your writing score. Cool. thanks for coming along. I hope that was helpful. And remember, now that you understand this theoretically, you now need to write a few letters, okay? Then it will be super clear. Then on test day, you're going to feel confident. You'll know what to do. That's the best way to prepare. Cool. See you soon. Bye-bye. And of course, I've lost my cursor. There it is there. Bye. Nope, lost it again. Bye.